I'm listening to the birds in the forest. And the car's going by. I just love the sound of that. Birds under the canopy. The moist, fresh air in a New England morning. There's a little bit of crispness, moisture. It's always wet up here. But I woke up with this topic on mind. There's a saying, you cannot see the forest because of the trees. So, I'm going to show you a couple of trees in story form. A few trees in story form. So, we can get a broader look at the forest. So, we'll start with one story. And the focus is going to be the idea that there are righteous and unrighteous that are working in the government systems within the law, the bounds of the law. Because remember, God gave the Israelites law. And what they did with it was a test. And the focus is supposed to be show mercy, show love, show compassion, give support to the orphans and the widows and those less fortunate and all of that. That's what we're supposed to do with our excess. When I get an overabundance of something, I know that it's not for me, that there's somebody else that I'm meant to share with it. If it comes to me, it comes to my household. If it comes to me and my household has its fill, then it's coming to me for the community. That's just how I perceive things. Sometimes I forget, I'm sure, but moving on. So, a tree. A woman, I worked in domestic violence organizations, so I have lots of stories about, especially women, but men, it's equal. You find what you do where you do. I just happen to have more experience with women because women are more likely to avail themselves of domestic violence programs. I did work with one that had a room in their shelter for men, but they usually got them a hotel room because a man in a house with women who are abused by men doesn't always go over so well. So, one tree is a woman finally escapes from an abuser who had kidnapped her and her children, and she finds a job where, in exchange for occupying a farmhouse in the middle of a tomato field, but she doesn't have like a cash income from it. So once a week she goes out, and there's this one place where she could get the donations for the week, get everything she needed to take care of herself and her two children, and go back to the farmhouse for the entire week and just live in peace and cleaning, maintaining the farmhouse. The man in charge of the farmhouse, he was maintaining his fields up in the Emerald Triangle. So you know what they do out there, what they grow. And so she's awoken one day by the abuser that she fled, and he says to her, "What are you doing here?" Like, what are you doing here? The back screen door lock is broken. He's in there. She's calling the sheriff's department because it's county territory. And while she's talking to the sheriff, he says, "Yeah, we're aware of the case. We got a call." And as they tell her this, she looks down to see that it's true. The city police are at the end of the driveway because they can't come onto the property because it's county, but there's a bunch of city cops down there. The federal child abduction unit is walking up the driveway. That man had called them and told them that she was keeping the kids in cages, that she was some weird religious fanatic, and she was going to marry the son with the daughter. And they're coming up. And it's a state where no matter what happens, like, she has to report to the court all her movements so that the other parent can know where their children are. Both the children weren't his. So she goes to the court, and the mediator understands this guy is vile. You do not want a child left alone with this man. So what he does is he recommends to the judge that both the children, he put his name on the other child's birth certificate. So, too bad, dude. You have to take both children. You're responsible for both children. That way there, the younger did not ever have to go alone with the man. And so she ended up, again, there's workings within the legal system where mercy and understanding, compassion, and, the priority is the well-being of the children. So you go into domestic violence shelter, call the child federal abduction unit, and say, I can't disclose where I'm at. I signed a legal non-disclosure agreement, which is what happens when you go into a domestic violence shelter. This one just happened to be just across the state lines. And then an angel flight took her to another state where she told the facts of the case, brought the cases, the evidence from the other place, and the judge there, the law in that state allows that in those cases, in certain cases, the other parent isn't allowed to know the physical address of the children. So, finally, this man, he's still calling, he's still sending curses. Did you read that? Don't read that. She's like, no, I felt like it was a curse when I opened it, so I didn't read it. Oh, good. So, how some mostly white boy from Bohunk, Oklahoma, who has no education, who's living on the streets so he doesn't have to pay child support, comes up with this curse that is obviously of a different language. Okay, there's fishy stuff happening there. But there, you have a tree where justice was served to protect these children. Now another tree up in Maine, very small town. This woman, she escapes an abusive relationship. She files all the paperwork. So, the guy, he did not want to claim his child. There was no fatherly interest whatsoever. So she filled out all the appropriate forms, moved in with a friend in another state where she got a job, she got safe housing, proper care for her children while she worked full time. Her life was good. She achieved her goal. She gets a knock on the door from the local prosecutor's office telling her, we're not going to enforce this because it's illegal. This order that's coming out of Maine from a judge. It's illegal. We're not going to enforce it. But then several days later, cop comes to the door, tells her, you better get these kids in the car. Here's the order. And if you don't, I'm going to shove you down and I'm going to rip those kids off your legs, because she's got a child crying on each one of her legs. And she has no choice, because that police officer just said he was going to hurt her and her children. They were physically going to be hurt if she didn't convince them. And so the older, and now we're talking about little, sorry, that's emotional. Little 4 and 3-year-old, 5 and 4-year-old. The older has to convince the younger. And then the father, well, where's their shoes? Where are their shoes? She's like, you expect me to find a pair of shoes in a kid's room? No, you can buy the kids shoes on the way back to Maine. And so she goes back to Maine. She finds a lawyer who says, this order, I would take that judge license, she said, but I can't work in this circuit. I'm not licensed for his circuit. And none of the lawyers in that circuit would go against the judge. It's a small town. And they're friends. The father is friends with the judge. So she has no chance. She has absolutely no chance. Another tree. Woman, she doesn't have a phone, but she separates from her husband, and he's supposed to bring the daughter to stay with her because he had no interest in raising her. I mean, she'd ask him to even hold the baby, and he'd be like, oh, and he'd accidentally bang the baby's head on the railing of the stairs, the corner of the doorway. See, I can't do it, I can't hold her. But his mother wanted a child. She wanted a baby girl. So instead of bringing, the woman moved, and then he was supposed to bring the daughter to stay with her. Instead, she calls up. He had left his job, his entire household, his mother, his brother, his father, all of them up and left with no forwarding address. It took her 4 years to find her child. And she called the child abduction unit, she called the court, she called everybody she could, and what they had to say to her was, don't bring any of that up. Just start from scratch. The thing is, he had gone to court. He had divorce papers sent to their former address, and then because they couldn't find her there, he published it in a newspaper, not even in that old county, a different county. So she couldn't see the announcement. She couldn't show up in court. And so there was a child support order against her, visitation orders. She had no visitation rights except for what the father allowed her. How'd that go? Of course he wasn't going to allow it. There was excuse after excuse, and no, he doesn't feel safe around her, and blah, blah, blah. So the woman has no chance, and now she's got child support order against her, which she can't pay because she's unemployed. They just took a wild guess, okay? So there you have a few trees. And that's in the United States of America through, let's see, we have California, Oklahoma, Ohio, Maine, basically covered throughout those states. Oh, and Arizona is kind of factored into one of those. So now let's go over to the Middle East. So I spent time in my ignorance as a spiritual advisor, psychic, on the hotline. And a woman from Egypt, I had 2 calls from Egypt. One was a young woman. She was going to commit suicide. She had succumbed to a guy in college that she thought they were in love and they were going to get married. But once he got the intimacy he wanted, he never called her again. So she's like, I am ruined. I will never get a marriage match. There's a potential that there's an honor killing that might happen. And so I talked to her, and 6 months to a year later, I get an email that I get a wedding invitation, actually. She's getting married. Her life is going well. It's good. Another older woman, she calls me and she says, my husband cheated on me. He left me. He took all the money. He alienated my children against me. I think just to get back at him, I want to go have an affair. So I know that they're very, very religious over there. So I ask her, I say, well, would having an affair ruin or interfere with your relationship with God as you understand it? And she says, yes. I said, why would you let that man ruin the one relationship you do have control over? She said, And further down the line, months, a year later, I get an email. She's living in America with one of her children. Her life is going great. But I learned through interacting with people in the Middle East that female circumcision still goes on. And the intention of circumcision is that people can't enjoy sex to the full. And if they can't enjoy sex to the full, then they're going to be less likely to have affairs, have sex outside of a marriage. They will only have sex because they have to, is the idea. But then science goes on and proves that the way these parts of the body are created in all those nerve endings, it creates a bond and an intimacy through this physical connection that is greater than just sex. It bonds them chemically, spiritually. There's deep purpose in that. And so by taking that away, you're more likely to have sex just for the sake of having sex, which is a constant search for that connection, which the bodies are now deprived of because physically they've been handicapped, they've been mutilated, so they can't make that life bond oneness connection with each other. So another practice in the Middle East is young women, very young girls who are in homes where they're exposed to inappropriate contact will be pregnant. And there are those in the community that know that this little girl, she's lived isolated. She's had no exposure to like porn, rated R movies like we have over here. This cannot enter into the heart of this child. So they take her into a household of women, and she has a virgin birth. There are virgin births in the Middle East to this day for that reason. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus' birth is anything but a miraculous virgin birth. I'm presenting trees in the forest. But by Jewish law, Mary turned up pregnant before moving in with Joseph. Mary should have been stoned to death. Period. End of story. But Yeshua showed a different way of handling that law. Let those without sin cast the first stone. But it shows a whole bunch of other things as well, because Yeshua's lineage is supposed to be validated through the house of David, a patriarchal line. Now, Mary she was a natural Jew. She, belonged to the priestly class, and there's nothing wrong with her lineage. However, Yeshua's lineage includes women from other cultures, like Rahab. She was a prostitute. It's a matrilineal line. It's not a patrilineal line that Yeshua comes through. It's a matrilineal line that integrates Jew and Gentile. I'm just saying, pointing out what is reportedly historical fact. Make what you will of it. So now, I saw a video, another tree, that was a tree, going to another tree in this forest of humanity. I saw this video out of a courtroom where the judge condemns, and this is an American courtroom, the person to life in prison And if you should die early and reincarnate or go into another body, that body will immediately be put in prison. You are born as a baby, you will be put in prison. And, we're day-to-day average people. I am guilty as anyone, walking around, taking everything at face value. This guy's just mean. He's not making sense all of a sudden. Oh, this one's just in a bad mood. That's why that's not working out. And, this person's being really nice to me. Yay. But that judge knows what Scripture already prophesied. Those who keep souls in jars. And I used to read, the Scripture, the rabbi I was listening to yesterday was talking about reading through Isaiah and how they cut up people's bones as if in the stew pot. And I always thought that was metaphorical. But knowing what I now know, coming out of the satanic ritual abuse circles, this is literal. And there was a judge that knew what was happening. Now go back to the tree with the father who sent a curse in a language that he couldn't possibly have been exposed to or know. There are spirits occupying people. There's not just a Masonic hall in the town that I live in, where the upper ups are doing all these satanic rituals, binding souls. My father was in the Masons. Before that, he guarded the president as the president traveled during the Vietnam War. So there's no way my father did not go through some sort of MK Ultra type program. And the promise is, this one, when it hit me, was just like everlasting life from Satan, okay? Or whatever demon or Nephilim spirit is being dealt with and served here. Oh, you will never die. We will put you in the body of someone, somebody born to your family line. Hey, dude, we put you in a girl's body this time. Oh, lady, I'm sorry, there were only male children in your family line. You gotta occupy that one. Or, alright, little soul, we sucked you out of your body, and, well, we were promised you by your granddaddy, your great-granddaddy, your great-great-great-grandpa, and so we're just gonna throw you over here in this body and wipe your memory clean, and we're gonna have fun with you later on. Yeah. So we see little trees that we take as surface value, case by case. We see justice done within the structure of laws that were given. We see injustice done within structure of laws that are given. And then we pull back and we see a forest of souls and spirits mix, match. We are all like Franken people. A spirit, the soul from this one, the body's programmed and formed to serve what is not in there, but is over here. And I had a very dear friend. And he comes to me all excited. He was born in a female body. He was always an advocate for the weak, the abused, and all of that. But he came to me, and he said, I finally saw my face. Woke up every morning knowing that what was born as a little girl was not his face. He finally saw his face. And he was so happy. Then he was ritually violated and dismembered. By people who, taken at face value, these are good people that support their community, work within their community. They have tried to leave this demon-possessed community and then get sucked right back into it and just can't, they don't know how it happens. Does the face value person, the personality running the show on the day-to-day even know? Probably not. They probably wake up in the morning with some strange things around them that they don't understand, but then go on and maybe do some drugs to help forget about it. So basically, there are those of us who are coming into wholeness, who are maybe born and preserved into wholeness because they come from a family line that has honored their ancestors and served God and all of that. Which at this point, I'm like seeing, is that even possible nowadays? But we're gonna, imagine that there are. We are a forest of Franken people. And there are times when I look and it is such a ridiculous, preposterous thing for my mind because I couldn't even imagine. I'm guilty of, okay, I can clean the carcass of a deer, I can help do that, put it on, while we're cleaning, put it in a nice cast iron pan on the wood fire out in the garage, partake of it, butter, garlic, good stuff. But to be the one to slice the throat, I haven't had to do that. Just the sound of it makes me sick because I think I might have killed a fish, but mostly I remember throwing them back. I don't know. So I'm guilty of this. I am totally guilty of just being the one to make that choice that my life is more precious than this other life. I can't do that. If somebody else is making the choices, then I can partake of it. But that idea is just, but that there are people that do that to human life and parts and pieces, and it seems preposterous to me that somebody would do that. But then I have to break down the walls of my ignorance and understand that for spirits occupying these bodies, that is the greatest delight of their life. And that this stuff is really happening. That's our forest. We're walking around, we're taking everything at face value, la-di-da. That stuff doesn't happen. Once in a while you hear stories like, oh, a whole congregation of Christians got slaughtered over here, And it's like, God, that's horrible. But we don't know how horrible because that's all movie stuff. I haven't watched a horror movie since I was a child. I wonder why I was a child who had nothing to do late at night alone in a home but watch Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I could have been in bed sleeping, but obviously, Daddy and his Masonic rituals, he gets to be wealthy now. offered my soul up, my body, through violation, to be occupied by something that really wanted me to see that violence. So yeah, trees in a forest of man beasts. And there are people, they aren't into it that deep. There are smaller lodges, like a moose lodge or, something like that. Who knows, the catfish lodge down in wherever. There are factions. There are factions everywhere. And they live a normal life. They're not going out and doing vile. They come home, after work. They watch their TV, whatever they do. They do holidays and stuff. But they don't want to hear about God. Nothing. Anything to do with spirituality. They do not want to hear it. They'll be loyal people. They will be there for their neighbors. They will show every good quality that anyone would want to see in a person who wants to see good qualities in a person. But you cannot talk to them about God. They may not get violent. They may say they wish they could. But there is no way that they will, of their own free will, go to a church service or anything. Maybe to a wedding. But their parents belong to one of those lodges. That is the forest that we live in. We see some good trees, some good circumstances, some blessings. But we live in a forest full of Franken beings with rotting, decaying, violent trees all around us. So the need to be strong. I picked up on something yesterday. For those of us that God wants to help out of these situations because our hearts are inclined to it, because we've hated the world since we were children, wanted no part of it, He has to draw closer to us than He does somebody who's surrounded by people who already worship Him. So there are people, they'll go to church, they'll be, obedient to God's laws, they'll go to synagogue, they are educated in the scriptures, they're generous, they are kind, they are active in their communities, but they've never had like the super hyper miraculous natural experiences that someone who came from a worse background might have had. And it's because it's according to need. That person who's done good all their life, they have support systems, they have God's blessing. They may feel like, they got to worry about their mortgage, they got to worry about their insurance, they got to worry, but they have always had a roof over their head. They've always had a congregation to go to. They've always had support and encouragement to pray. And God hears them and blesses them. He loves them no less and He loves them no more. But those of us that is why he has to draw that much closer to us to pull us out. And it's not even because we want miracles. We just want what all the other worshipers of his have. But his hand has to be mighty. It has to be. To come into our lives and work for us. So there you have it. We have forests and we have trees. And if you take a step back and you look down and you see what God sees, what kind of tree do you choose to be? What kind of tree, set of circumstances, experiences do you want to be and facilitate and be a part of in your community? And how do you want to use and apply laws? Because how you apply the law is how God is going to apply the law to you. That's the basic message that is reiterated to us. That which you do unto others. If you use the law to take an unfair advantage because you're selfish, but if you use the law to get an advantage for the good of others, then the law will be used to get an advantage for you, so you can use it for the good of others and the good of yourself. Because one popular saying that was going about was, be the change you want to see in the world. So you have to be what you want to see in other people. And another saying is, you cannot give from an empty cup. If I'm not taking in and allowing goodness, but only providing, I'm going to be a dry cup eventually. I can be full of spirit. I can give blessings. I can give perceptions. I can give understandings. I could share knowledge that I've accumulated, but I cannot give material things. I cannot clothe the naked. I cannot feed the hungry. I cannot give something to drink to the people that are thirsty. And so we have to allow laws. Like, we can't say, oh no, I don't qualify for that. No, you can't give that to me. That's not according to the policies. What are you doing? I don't want to violate. Gracefully accept what is given to you. Without questioning or fearing it. If you know and you understand the alignment, who you're aligned to, why this blessing is aligning with you. Because there are people who will say, well, that's not fair. You know, like a friend came to me and she's told me, oh man, this woman, she signed up for housing. She got in housing like just a few days. Didn't take long at all. Other people have been on the list for years. And so what she was expecting the housing providers would be able to do for me is not what happened. But that's so that I can be in these circumstances, coming to this state of being and whatever benefit. Like, I've learned to trust that somebody who says, I will be there for you no matter what, actually is. And that was a huge growth for me. And so these circumstances is just one tree in the forest of my life where I learned nothing but distrust. I would accept, I would receive, but I would not expect anybody to do anything but turn on me a few days down the road. And that didn't happen in this tree. It's standing out in the forest of my life as it grows and expands into a greater forest of experience. I'm liking this tree and forest metaphor. It's serving on many levels. And may it serve you